All right, good afternoon, PGMS families. It is Sean Roach, principal of Pacific Grove Middle School. And I wanted to take a moment and kind of take you guys through some of the lessons we have upcoming under our emphasis of discussing impact versus intent. We had a lesson several advisories ago which discussed kind of the power of words and differentiating what we intend to say to somebody and really kind of thinking about the impact that it has on that person and keeping that in mind when they converse and interact with one another. It's super important, and it's something that I think we can all improve on at PGMS. So I'm going to walk you through our lessons. There's going to be 4 total lessons. 2 will be combined, and then kind of a reflection activity. So we're going to start off, teachers are going to start off with this in advisory class. Let me go ahead and do slideshow. So this is where we start. This is going to be the introduction that our teachers are going to be going through. We're going to watch and discuss some clips about our identity, who I am, and our differences. Our identity is a very sensitive subject because there's a lot of feelings mixed within the subject. We're going to make a list on the board of classroom agreements. That's setting the tone immediately as to the behavioral expectations of our students during advisory, during these lessons. These are examples. We also want the students to participate in that. So respectful curiosity, no put downs, engage with your classmates, be an active listener, and for one person to speak at a time. We found that a lot of kids, a lot of interest in expressing their opinions and some of their stories. And we want to make sure that we all hear what each other has to say. So this is the opening. We took an excerpt from Race to Be Human, a really wonderful documentary. And so we're going to preview this by, we like to do what's called a primer. And so we like to say that first bullet point is for self-reflection. So it's kind of in their head. Think about or write an early experience when you realized your own identity. And then parenthetically, it has some of the things that we're going to be discussing as far as difference is concerned. Then we are going to play this video.
I never grew up talking about racism, but we all knew that it existed. I mean, the first instance that I had with racism was at 6 years old.
When I realized I was black and really realized like what black really meant, I want to say I was like 9.
I was 6.
I think 5.
First time understanding I was black, I don't even know if that's the right way to put it.
At kindergarten, I just realized that everyone was a lot lighter than me.
It's so traumatizing. The first experience that I had, I was little.
It wasn't like I ever thought I was white, but I never noticed that like me being different was something that people would notice enough to like say something about it.
Yeah, that's when I first realized that I wasn't white.
I think the first time I realized I was Korean, not white, was it's funny because you would expect you know from birth, but I think was when in elementary school, people would make those remarks and microaggressions. I'm like, oh, that's what sets me apart. Like not my strength, not my intelligence, not my input, but it's my race.
Okay, then we're going to move back to the lesson. This is going to be a journaling activity, and we're going to ask for students who feel comfortable sharing a little bit about their identity, that this would be a really good time to do that and just kind of explore it. The overarching goal in this is to begin to really impress upon students getting to know people based on the content of their character and what kind of a person they are, rather than stereotyping people based on the differences that we see. So the next little portion down here is, how did the opening scene make you feel? If any student on paper would like to share when they realized their own identity. And though the Race to Be Human really kind of focuses on racial differences, there are a myriad of different things that make us different, as you can see from the list up there. And we encourage everybody to explore their difference. I think it's important for everybody to take a look at things that make them different and unique, so that they can empathize with others. And then what do we remember this moment? That'll be the last on this slide here. Then we move into a discussion on a social construct, which is a really important thing to define to students. We do it in kind of a humorous way here. But so I discuss a little bit in a video that I made personally about what a social construct is, and it has its benefits, but it also has its drawbacks. So we're talking about coolness. Social constructs change through time, which is important to know. And so this was the height of cool in 1760. Here's the height of cool in 1880. And finally, from my generation, the coolness in 1986. So they'll get to see how things have kind of changed throughout time, and it's a good way, kind of a funny way to set the scene. So the first thing we'll do is we want to have students actively watch and listen. So the primer in this is going to be, what is a social construct? So we will take a look at this. All right, good morning, PGMS. It's your proud principal, Mr. Roach, and I'm here today to talk to you guys about what a social construct is. It's a big word and it's kind of hard to explain, but basically a social construct is an agreement among people to kind of assign attributes to different groups. So if you see something tall and green and that has leaves, we've all agreed that we're going to call that a tree. Money is an example of a social construct as well. On its own, it is literally a piece of paper or a coin, but we assign it value so that we can use it to exchange for goods and services. Time is also a social construct. We agree that this is what time it is. We even shift the time backwards and forwards as an agreed upon thing. Now, social constructs are not a bad thing. They do serve a really strong purpose. If you see something giant and furry with long claws and you decide that that is a bear, you assign things like, that could be dangerous, I need to get away from it. But there's also other forms of social constructs used to kind of identify people that are different from us. We're going to talk a lot about this. We're going to look at examples of social constructs, and they change throughout time, oftentimes for the better. So the goal of this learning is to provide an opportunity to kind of study our assumptions about others and look past these kind of blanket beliefs and get to know people based on their character and what kind of a person that they are. So now we're going to explore some examples of social constructs coming right up. Thank you. Okay, and so we go, teachers will then navigate back to this social construct. And so as a class, after they've all watched it, they begin to define it in their own terms, what it is, and discuss a little bit of things that they define as what a social construct is. And this is going to be very interesting because it takes a lot of assumptions that we all have and really allows us to kind of take a look at whether those are warranted or not. Then we kind of transition to what this means specifically for race. And so what is a definition of
my definition of race? Good question.
So race is, like white, Hispanic. No, not Hispanic. Hispanic is white, right? I don't know. It's a confusing one because I always thought it was more cultural. So I guess I don't know.
I literally take a sociology class. I don't know. There's so many different definitions of it.
Yeah.
I'm also not too sure, but yeah.
I think I know race is a social construct, and there's only there's ethnicity, but race isn't really a thing.
The definition of race is that we are one race, the human race.
Okay, so then we will transition back. And this is going to kind of prime our next lesson and discussion. So we'll be doing this in one advisory. then we are going to move on to the next portion of our advisory, which involves defining and identifying microaggressions. Found some really good stuff for kids. So what's going to happen is the primer is what are microaggressions and what are their effects. So it's always important to prime students so that when they're watching something, they kind of know what to look for. It really helps with engagement and retention. So here we go. This video, by the way, was made by a college in Wisconsin.
You did really well on the skills checkoff today. I was pleasantly surprised.
Since I was a kid, I've always known I've wanted to do this.
Consider a time you've witnessed an interaction that left you feeling uncomfortable because it implied that someone or a group wasn't capable or expected to be successful. This interaction is called a microaggression. Microaggression is a term used to describe remarks or actions that imply negative associations and insults toward an individual or group. These are often directed at members of historically marginalized groups. People are often unaware that the impact of their words and actions can have such harmful consequences. This video is part 1 of a 2-part series designed to empower you to notice and interrupt microaggressions. Every microaggression students and staff experience adds to their load. One unintentional comment may seem insignificant, but these comments and experiences can get very heavy. By creating a better understanding of microaggressions and how to stop them, WTCS faculty, staff, and students will create a more inclusive and safer learning environment for all. So, how can you help address microaggression when you see it happening? When you notice microaggressions occurring, interrupt the situation. You could 1. Ask questions to get at any underlying assumptions.
Thanks. Why did that surprise you?
2. Acknowledge what happened to the person affected.
I heard that comment and it didn't feel right.
3. Be an active bystander and explain to the person saying or behaving in a harmful way why their actions had a negative impact, even if unintentional.
You did really well on the skills checkoff today. I knew you would.
Addressing microaggression is an ongoing process. You can start right where you are today.
Cut right there. Couple of things I love, the fact that we're really including bystanders. You know, people, if you remember, our quarter 2 emphasis was on upstanding. Like when you see something going on, stand up, affect the situation, and help try and kind of resolve it. So the class will then segue into what is a microaggression. The class will take some time and define that. Then students will kind of reflect a little bit on if they've ever been put down, and I put this term roasted in parentheses. I can't stand that term, but that's how a lot of kids think is okay to interact with one another. How could microaggressions affect the person they're directed towards? Again, they're getting into that reflective mind, that empathy, so that they can feel what it's like from the receiving end of that. And then how can a person take responsibility? So the primer in this one is how can they take responsibility for their microaggressions and hold themselves accountable rather than becoming defensive. And there's some clues here for the teacher to prompt if necessary. And there's this clip, which is part 2 of what we just saw.
In video 1, we defined microaggression and provided 3 strategies for interrupting them when they come up. Ask questions to get at any underlying assumptions. Acknowledge what happened to the person affected. Be an active bystander and explain to the person saying or behaving in a harmful way why their actions had a negative impact, even if unintentional. Microaggressions can be subtle and occur despite our best intentions. How do we know if we are saying and doing things that are harmful to others? In this video, we offer reflection questions to help us examine our own participation in microaggressions. What was my intention? What assumptions are behind what I said or did? What was the impact?
Where are you from?
From right around here.
Yup, me too. But where are you really from?
Me? I was born and grew up here, in Wisconsin. The intention of this question might be to connect with someone new, but the underlying assumption is that this person doesn't look like they are from here, and the impact is they may feel othered or question if they belong. Microaggressions can invalidate or exotify someone's identity, or imply stereotypical expectations, even when intended to be complimentary. Have you heard or even said any of these common microaggressions? What might the intentions, assumptions, and impacts be of each? Wow, you're so articulate. I feel so OCD today. Don't make him angry. He's a veteran. I can't say your name. I'll just call you Jay. Can I touch your hair? You want me to say they, them, or theirs when you're clearly a woman? Do you need a translator? You'd be prettier if you smiled more. If you're unsure why some of these statements can be considered microaggressions, use this as an opportunity to self-educate. What other microaggressions have you witnessed, experienced, or participated in? Noticing and addressing microaggressions is an ongoing process. By using these strategies and reflection questions, we can create a more inclusive environment for everyone.
Okay, and that's where we'll stop. So they have examples of an overview of microaggressions, as well as what some of the things they can do to respond. The next thing is to put their learning into practice. And so the next exercise is going to involve continuing to support impact versus intent. There's a lot of stuff in there kind of analyzing, what was intended to be said, but really what the impact was. And so the group activity is going to have multiple examples or phrases in which students in small groups are going to be asked to try to identify the intent of what was being said, but definitely the impact of what's being said. And then groups will share out once around in a circle and allow the other groups, because they're very excited to share their own opinion, the other groups to kind of contribute to that saying. So here's a couple of the ones that we've either heard or ones we just kind of came up with on our own. I'll let you take a brief moment and read those. Okay. Again, these are things that may be innocuous in nature, but make people feel like they don't belong. So we've had those videos, those really nice videos that we've seen of kind of the cartoon characters. Here is a wrap-up video, which
When people come up to you and say, "You have a really exotic look.
You're so cute for a Black girl."
Wow, you are so articulate.
Indian people are really smart.
Where are you from?
Where are you really from?
What are you?
People made the curry comments, which is very common.
I think I've experienced some microaggressions.
Yeah, I experience those on a daily basis.
And microaggressions are small acts that can actually be words or they can be gestures. But the impact of microaggressions is that they imply that the recipient of the microaggression is less than.
Oh, yeah, when I was younger and I experienced microaggressions, I absolutely would just take it. I would internalize it and I would shut down. And in fact, to the point where I'd get really quiet and I would not be interested in engaging in conversation anymore.
Oh, definitely. Growing up in Hong Kong, microaggression towards my hair has been a very big thing. They would just jump into touching it, grabbing it.
Having someone say to me, "Oh, your last name is Kim, no wonder you're so good at math." Although that may seem like a compliment on, my ability to do math, it's also a microaggression because they're stereotyping me or all Koreans to be good at math.
In terms of an Indian stereotype, it's you're so smart, you're really good at maths, you're good at school in general, and I think that does pressure me to live up to that expectation almost. But recently I've started to learn that it's okay not to really live up to those expectations. Of course, try your best, but it's just a stereotype. It's not true for everybody. So, yeah.
Imagine experiencing microaggressions every single day of your life. If you experience that over and over again, it might weigh on your self-esteem.
So microaggressions are insidious in that if you experience one, the first thing this person says who actually committed that microaggression is, well, that's not what I intended. I'm not a bad person, or you need to stop being so sensitive, or how come you can't take a joke? It's funny. I often get, oh, you're so well-spoken, after I do something that's not particularly like novel or interesting, just giving a presentation, or, you know, I'm in a role where I give speeches, I speak on panels. It's weird for someone to come up to me and say, oh, wow, you're so well-spoken, because the subtext of that is, we didn't expect you to be educated enough to be well-spoken, or we expected you to stumble or not know what to say or not relate to us.
When an Asian person is asked, where are you from? And then they say, well, I'm from New York. No, where are you really from? And so the idea of that microaggression is it plays on the myth of the perpetual foreigner, that Asian Americans aren't really American. They haven't really been here for that long, even if they have been here and their families have been here for decades or centuries.
You know that you're not an exotic person, you're a very normal person who's been living here just as much as they have, so being called something like exotic might be a compliment, but to somebody receiving it, it can be very harmful to how they see themselves and how they feel about themselves in terms of their ethnicity or their race.
Microaggressions over time chip away at people and reinforce that inferiority or otherness that comes from it. At its core are things that subtly cue you that you are other and you don't belong.
Okay, and then we'll transition back to this. This will be our wrap-up video and reflection for students.